All right, sweet. Parker, you want to kick us off?
Yes, let's do it. Essentially, the agenda for this meeting is governance, and the people here might have seen, or in this video, there might be a link in the description detailing the first proposal that we have to create some actual formal structure here for the organization. That so far it's just been a right now it's just been a bunch of people doing tasks when they feel like it, and the nature of a volunteer thing is people get distracted, people have other things to do, and those tasks don't necessarily get continued upon or passed upon or whatever it may be. So what we're trying to do here is create some formal roles, projects, and tasks. And the first effort with that will be to just create a sort of outline for that. So to give a little outline before I pass the wand to Tyler, the idea right now is that there will be two very broad categories of people working on this. And what most of this meeting will be about is talking about the first kind, which would be the board of directors. And not in the sense of just wanting to get people on the 50c3, but the people who, a group of probably 4 to 6 people who are willing to dedicate a few hours a week to the project, attend monthly meetings, have a clear defined mission of what they think the project is, and are willing to stand up for that, in the sense of if the project's veering off, they'll be able to put their word to correct it. So this will be beneficial to have some sort of driving force forward and get things moving. And there will be specific roles on this board, but those are yet to be defined. Those will be defined within proposals once we have a sort of group that is willing to take on this role. And then the other would be volunteers / OSF members who take on specific roles or projects that are assigned by someone on the board, and they'll contribute and take responsibility for completing that task or role or project. So essentially, that's a rough outline. Tyler's done a great job outlining the proposal process that'll be one of the main functions of the board, and a little additional information. So I'll pass the mic to him now.
Sweet, thanks, Parker. So yeah, just to kind of like give additional color on what Parker was describing, like, you know, I think a way to think of what we're doing here is we're fairly decentralized, right? Like no one's getting paid. We're all across the world. We're all trying to like build this thing together, and that's hard because it's like a decentralized organization, and doing a decentralized organization is amazing because you get to unlock all of the special value that all these people across the world want to contribute to the project. But it also has unique challenges too, right? And that like you're basically herding cats of trying to get all these people across the world moving in the same direction, and that can be really challenging, right? Like, you know, on Skype, it's really easy for threads to get lost and for details and discussions to get muddled. It's just hard to follow. And so a big thing of what we're trying to do is if like you think about an organization or an Open Sangha Foundation as a living organism, we're basically trying to create the memory for that living organism, right? We want to have a way where like we can make a decision and then say, hey, like you didn't have to be at this meeting. You didn't have to be here this whole time. You could, you know, be a new member. You could just read on our past decisions, and then you can start contributing, adding value. You can find out ways that you can plug in. You can have all the context you need to start doing something that we've already talked about and put a lot of thought into. So it makes it a lot easier for people across the world to, you know, contribute, add value, and like all make sure we're like growing in a similar direction. So let me share my screen here. Well, actually, I'm not even sure if this is necessary, but I recommend you all open up the proposal. It's in the chat, and we'll kind of go through a couple big components of it. And so the first piece of this is that there are two types of projects. two types of ways that like any member of Open Sangha Foundation can add value, and that's through a role or a project. And so a role is kind of like this ongoing work, like a secretary or treasurer or something that we're always going to need that. It's ongoing, right? A project is something that's more limited in scope, right? It's like setting up the initial version of the website. It's writing a blog post or something. Something that anybody can do and just plug in. It has limited scope and it's time defined. And so what we want to do is create a process for introducing new roles and projects, because we have many good ideas for roles on projects. We've come up with 1,000 of them, but sometimes the problem is that context for those things gets lost and it's hard to find. But then also too, like sometimes we don't have the resources to do all of them at the same time, and so we want some good way of saying, well, you know, what proposals do we want to prioritize, and what are the other proposals that we want to kind of maybe save for later, or they need to be fleshed out more. So actually, I'll share my screen because I think it's like a nice visual aid. All right, let me know. Can you guys see my screen? I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger.
Yes,
Yep.
Cool.
Yes, I've read that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use this as like a visual aid so that we're all looking at the same thing. All right, so the idea of doing this is doing it through proposals, right? And so proposal is a way of saying like, hey, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in the world, anybody can say, hey, this is a thing I want to do. And there's like different things you can do, right? One could be creating a new role. So like, hey, like I want to be our blogger. I want to create the blog. I want to maintain it. I want that to be my ongoing role. Or it could be a new project saying like, hey, like I'm going to contact all of our past teachers and see who from the previous iteration of Open Sangha Collective and see if they want to be on the new project, right? And that it's a well-defined project. Or it could be a different one. We're saying like, hey, our mission statement is a little bit vague. I think we can make this a little bit better. Or it could be changing our governance rules, saying like, hey, the board shouldn't be deciding everything. The whole community should be deciding other sorts of things, right? It could be like a change in how our process works as a group. So basically, the idea of having a proposal and writing it out in a really detailed way is that it will live in the living memory of the whole group, where now like you don't have to be here, you don't have to attend every meeting. You can just look at proposals and have all the context you need. So the way that we're proposing starting this though is that a proposal can be created by anybody. So it doesn't matter who you are, you can create a proposal, but it's only voted on by the board. And the reason why starting out like initially where only having the board vote on it is that it's a little bit chaotic right now. There's a lot of moving parts, people who can contribute differing amounts of time. And we want to have like a very simple way of making sure that we're all, at least initially, moving in the same direction since we're a really young organization. And so starting off a little bit more centralized, and then as we have a better process, making this more decentralized, where it's not just the board calling the shots, it's actually more of the community. And so that's the initial proposal, and part of that is keeping the board small. Initially I think we had an idea of like, okay, well, let's get as many people as we can on the board because we want to have people contribute. And what we kind of realize is, that a big board is a little bit unwieldy, and it's hard. People can't all commit the same amount of time. What's actually a lot more powerful is having a limited amount of people, maybe 4 to 6 people, who can all commit a serious amount of time, who all have a really well-defined idea in their head of like what we're actually doing as a group. And the board can grow, especially as the organization grows, but starting smaller is just a lot easier for a smaller organization. And so that's what the board is doing. The board is basically just the board has 3 jobs, basically. First, they vote on proposals. Second, they can add and remove board members. And then the third thing they do is hold the director accountable. And that's like kind of traditionally when you think about a nonprofit, that's the main purpose of a board, is that they can just sack the director if need be, and to make sure that the organization is staying on mission. So then the director, what they're responsible for is they're all about executing proposals, right? So we're going to have these beautiful proposals, these beautiful documents to say, hey, here's what we're doing. This is exactly what we're all aligned on as an organization to execute. And the director just makes it happen. And so that's going to include filling people to be responsible for these projects and roles, right? So when you create a proposal, you're just saying like, hey, like I think there should be a treasurer. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but there should be a treasurer. That we definitely need this legally, right? And then what would be the director's job to do is figure out who that person is and making sure there's always a person in a role. So yeah, that's really.
In fact, there are
Oh, sorry.
traditional roles that have, in all of these organizations, you have traditional roles, and you've mentioned two of them, the director and the treasurer. We also would have like the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. That seems to be at least the three roles that are in all organizations. Now, the question about the secretary would be the ones who is, I guess, sending out notices and getting people involved. You mentioned about having a small number of people on the board. The reason that I would like to have a larger board is for every board member to have two things going for that. One is that because it's not a small board, it's a large board, no one person gets the idea that he's the boss who runs the thing. The other point is that when it's a large board, that means that now the board individual members don't have a great big job to do. That's what I'm kind of afraid of, is that some tasks will become too daunting, and the option is quit the job rather than adding additional help to it. And so that's why I wanted to have a larger board. Is one for safety, and the other one is for security.
Yeah, and that completely makes sense. And like when me, Parker, and Christopher were talking about this yesterday, we shared those same concerns, but we actually came to a different conclusion with the same concerns. And so I'll talk about first about like making it so that no one becomes the boss. So we've kind of been reading, me, Christopher, and Parker, reading case studies on other boards. We actually have found surprisingly kind of the opposite thing happens, so that when there's a large board, oftentimes there's a diffusion of responsibility. So if there's somebody who wants to become like the head honcho or like the big shot, there's more of a room for them to kind of break through that apathy and kind of take the reins because it's split between many people, right? Whereas if you have a smaller board that can hold each other accountable and it's more focused, that's less likely to happen.
Okay. So I agree, so long as that small board is open with the rest of the community. Yes. Rather than taking the whole thing and going all on their own with it.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about, I don't mean to interrupt. If you got more to say, Tyler, I'll let you finish.
I have just one more thing to say on that, but yeah, I'll pass to you, Chris. It was about kind of making sure that like there's a lot of work to do, making sure that it's not just all on the board. And I think we can split apart these two rules of like who does the work and how decisions are made and documented. And so the board is just there to make decisions, and like there are people who are more invested, and so they're going to do a good amount of work too. But the way that we set the structure with proposals to make it much easier for people who are not on the board to contribute, right? So that's the idea of having formal like roles and projects. So is that you could just be some random person who showed up that, you know, wants to add value and say like, hey, we got a project for you. We got something. We have a one pager detailing exactly what you need to do, and we can plug you in immediately. And so the idea is that we're setting it in such a way that's not going to be on the board to do everything. It's going to be explicitly about the community contributing rather than just a couple people.
Mm-hmm. Another issue that has with that is that in fact I have heard several times that people don't want to be on the board because they don't want any financial responsibility. So first off, those guys who are willing to be on the board, thank you and congratulations. But I would like it set up. One of the best ways I think of doing that setup is to have no paid positions, that this is all going to be volunteer. If it is all volunteer and no paid positions, that I think goes a long way towards the safety of any liabilities that would come to any individual who just happened to have their name on a piece of paper that was filed with the government.
Yeah, the other thing too, I have experience on that side because I'm a financial secretary for a club on it, and we have it set up where the financial secretary, I take in all the money.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
So I take in all the money. So in a given month, let's say $5,000 or $6,000 comes in, I get all that money. I put that in a spreadsheet, and then at the end of the month, I meet up with the treasurer. I give the treasurer all the money along with the spreadsheet, and then the treasurer goes through everything and has everything, and then we both give a report to all of the members once a month. So there's one person that takes in the money, and the other person records all the money. And I mean, it's not going to stop somebody probably from stealing or whatever, but it's just one extra piece. It's like a two-step process instead of a one-step process.
Right.
So
I agree.
I don't know if we could do something like that. I mean, I'm assuming most money will come through PayPal or whatever, but yeah, if you have a two-step thing like that, I mean, it does help a little bit. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, so I think with whatever we do here, like the commitment's going to be on transparency, and so I'm not sure exactly what that process looks like. It looks like Chris has a lot more experience, and especially the financial side of it. But yeah, I mean, the idea of this board is just a way to facilitate communication and make really clear decisions, not to be the people who are like the head honchos, not to have all of the control, really just be a conduit for transparency across the organization.
Yeah, and like Tyler and Parker, and we were all talking yesterday. So most people don't want to have that much commitment. So just and we like Tyler was saying, we've read a bunch of case studies, and so when you have a big board, like no one really does anything. It's one guy doing everything anyway, and then the board just kind of nothing happens with that board. So better to have like really well defined board roles, like you're the financial secretary. That's all you do. You're a financial secretary. I mean, if they want to do other projects on the side, that's great. But that's what you are. You're the financial secretary. You're the treasurer. You're the director, and that's what you do. It's kind of like in a company. There's lots of employees or whatever, but the people that are at the top, they have very defined roles. So. That's how we were thinking on that, because otherwise the organization can just go sideways because either nobody does anything or one person is doing everything, even though you have 50 board members. And that seems to be what happens, I guess, from us reading about it. That is what happens with a lot of these organizations. It's just nothing gets accomplished, even though they have these big boards and everything else.
So I think another part of this proposal is that like it's not meant to be, hey, this is the end all be all of how we're going to work as an organization. It's more meant to be just a way to get us started, to like bootstrap the whole process of making changes, right? Sure. So be a living organism. And so I think what we want to do today is be like, hey, like, does this like feel like a good bootstrap, like a good starting point? There's going to be things wrong with it. There's going to be things we have to change. But does it feel like at least like a point like, hey, let's get it running and let's start doing this thing. So I'm curious.
Yes, I agree. So sorry. Things will evolve over time, and we do need to get the thing going. The three phases would be conception, birth, and raising a child. Okay, so this thing's already been conceived. We're in the process of giving birth, and the raising of the child is not done on the birth table. And so I agree that things, we need to get it set up so that we can get it rolling. And I was even going in my mind so far as to say that eventually we may in fact need to open up a new 501(c) that does have paid people. But that would be way long into the future. And so the setting up of the 501(c) now can be done with the kind that's, we're expecting not to get a lot of money, and we're expecting not to have any paid employees, but rather we're just trying to get the thing going and defining of the roles. So I think that we're kind of all on the same page with you, Tyler, and I really do appreciate the work that the three of you have put in. And that but we need more than 3 because of all of these little tasks that can be done. Now, part of the issue, I think, of the secretary, whoever is going to be doing that job, should be the coordination for the various roles, or not the roles, the task or the projects that are to be done.
I have a point related to this to make.
Run into that issue about, well, what do we do first? Do we do the website first? Do we do the emails first? Do we do the 501(c)(3) first, and all of that kind of birthing stuff that we're working on? And I think that right now we're in the process of just getting the 501(c) going.
And I think this will be, once we have this a group of people who are consistently putting time to this, it'll be then during those meetings they'll refine the roles, do those proposal process, so these things are in place. To take up what you said in terms of beyond us, us 3, I like the initial list you got together in terms of people who are at least interested in being part of the board. I'm not sure if they had a clear definition of what the board is. So what we've set up is
if they did, we should ask them.
Yes, and that's what we're doing. We have a submission, a Google form, where you leave your name, address, and whatever information that the government would need, in addition to just 5 questions that we have in the sense of, in your words, what is the mission of Open Sangha? I don't have them quite listed here. What will be the responsibilities of being on the board? Can you contribute these responsibilities? What roles are you willing to fill? And are you willing to handle conflict? Because being part of this board will mean if it strays off mission, it's each and one of us responsibility to say, hey, this is off the mission. Here are my suggestions. Here's why it's going off the mission. And then what is the understanding that you have personally of the mission? So this is a form that for anyone who wants to be on the board that we'll send off. And for the people who have volunteered but aren't here, we'll send this video recording as well as the form.
Okay.
So that's really it. We're talking like 4 to 6 folks. And I think what we want to do today is be like, hey, this proposal that we sent out in the channel yesterday, do we feel like we could all as a group sign off on this and say like, hey, this is our starting point? And then once Parker, once he kicks off the board selection process, then once we have our board, they can kind of like get the ball rolling and start doing things. And basically we'll be kind of ready to go. And so the next step here would be like kind of a vote from all of us to say, hey, are we good with this proposal? And then a second thing would be Parker kicking off the board selection process. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. So
yeah, that sounds good.
So maybe we could
would
take
we like to have a vote? Yes.
On this proposal. If you're in, raise your hand. Don't be shy if you're not in. That's okay too. Robert,
Turn your video on, Robert, so we can see your hand.
All right. We got Robert. Wow,
guys,
incredible.
Guys, I'll do the
Okay,
electronic here. My signal is pretty bad.
Creative.
So just doing the electronic. Yeah. All right. Cheers, everybody.
All right. Thanks, y'all. All right. So I think we could probably even call it there too, unless Parker, do you have anything, or Chris, anything else you guys wanted to cover? Oh, we wanted to talk about Dhammarato's project ideas. Sorry, we didn't get to that.
Okay, well, the point that I would have is not so much of the structure of the organization or the roles, but now I'm looking at the various projects, and so that would be what I could speak on, and that I would divide our target audience into 4 groups, and that various people then can take one of these groups, knowing that there's going to be some crossover. The 4 groups are well-established teachers And what I mean by well established means that they've been teaching the Dhamma for more than 20 years and they're probably about 70 years old. So we're talking about a small group. But I've already got quite a list of those that include people like Achan Sumedo, Achan Pasano, Achan Amaro, Vila Maramsi. I notice I'm getting the monks off first because I can trust them. And then there's a few laymen out there, and including that would be maybe Dan Ingram. Dan Ingram is a good example of someone between that group and the next group, which is quasi-established teachers, teachers who have been in it. But that these guys are the ones that are still struggling with what they're doing. The next group down would be the wannabe teachers, the ones who were wanting to become a teacher, and the only options that they have, and this is a kind of surprise, this is an issue that I've looked at, is with all of the various millions of people now who are interested in the Buddha Dhamma, where's our next generation of teachers going to come from? Because the only options available now, it seems like, for really, really growing it, I mean, there's a difference between a prototype and a production model, right? So Achan Sumedo, Achan Amaro, Achan Pasano, Bhante Vila Maramsi, myself, Santikaro, this kind of list, we were all prototypes. We're looking now for production, okay? And I don't think that the model that is there now with Senjen and Jack Cornfield are two examples of teachers who see this and are trying to get some training going. But they, in order for the real training to be done, we need a larger group to help with that. And to be honest with you, paying $7,000 to watch some videos and then getting a piece of paper does not make a meditation teacher, no matter how much money Jack Cornfield makes off of them. That we need residential. And that's where this group of new teachers comes in. All of these four groups, including the fourth group of newbies. The newbies, the ones who were established enough to want to be teachers, those who are now trying to be teachers, and then the old established teachers are the four groups. And all four of these groups, we need to start directing them towards both integrating amongst themselves and also integrating into the Asian community. That's especially true for the students who are wannabe teachers. They're the best examples of getting them into the temples. But then your average Joe Blow Reddit poster are the ones who read, the ones who would reach out are the newbies. We also want to get them involved with going to the Watts. So these are the four groups that we have, and I think that we need to approach these four groups differently, but with the same aim of creating Sangha within the Western community. And so there are various projects that can be done that way. Much of this would be done through emails. And so we need to have some sort of an email list with, I've actually got quite a number of names. I've got about 170 teachers that are already there. So we could start with getting those teachers together. We also have that smaller group of teachers who have already been on the old website, who are already committed to teaching Dhamma without charging money for it. And that seems to be, in fact, that was the foundational point for getting this whole thing started is that we've got to get the money out of the Dhamma. That in fact, Parker, I would like it if you could do a small favor for me. You publish someplace, and I've lost track of it, where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is kind of like a one-liner or two-liner, where he is saying that even Watts who set a donation pot out front are trying to sell the Dhamma. Okay, so this is the way that we want to go for this. This is all going to be volunteer, no money much involved. So the answer to that, the question then would be, well, why do we want to do this, taking money? getting an organization, a 501(c)(3). Why do we want to take donations? And the answer for that is kind of a safety blanket for people who can quit their jobs and move into a Wat and establish themselves deeply into the Dhamma there. They will still need some help. And that if they ordained, then the Asian community would be Johnny on the spot to make sure that they've got everything that they need. What we're looking for is the Westerners who are not ready to ordain, but that they still want to devote their life to the Dhamma. And in that regard, we can get them into the Wat, get them around noble monks, and then supply them with the various small things that they would need, like maybe a cell phone or a laptop, maybe $100 for gas every once in a while, that sort of thing. The next one would be that once those guys get going, we can then, in those Wats, because believe me, I know I've met a lot of monks, and all of the monks are really interested in helping the Westerners get the Dhamma. They just don't have the tools. So we would supply the tools for the monks in the sense of the monks can already do a meditation retreat in their facilities. We do that on a regular basis. One example of that would be when a grandfather dies, all the young men in the family will come and ordain and stay at the Wat for a week or two. That's a regular occurrence both here in Asia and in the West. And so that means that the facilities are already geared up for having temporary guests, like for a retreat. But what we need to do is some of the logistics work for these retreats, like getting advertisements out or making sure that the food, making sure that there's going to be a cook, that kind of thing, so that our young guys who are in, well, maybe not so young, maybe they quit in middle age, or after they've gotten kids, they'll quit all of that worldly stuff and go live at the Wat. And so we want to have a little bit of support for them. In the beginning, in fact, I don't even have one example or one candidate yet, not even one. So we're really early on that. But if anybody is actually thinking about, well, maybe I'd like to go live in the Wat, that's a whole lot better than breaking up with girlfriends on a regular basis, then we can start. In fact, I've already thought about that. The way that I got the idea is I personally would be willing to support a couple of guys at the Wat myself. And I suppose that others of us would want to do that. But let's do it in a more coordinated way with this organization. So that's going to be the umbrella organization is going to have 4 target audiences, all of them within the Dhamma. And that we need various projects that's going to, so we could have someone who could be a coordinator for the established teachers, for the elders. In fact, I probably would take on that role myself because I know personally most of these old guys. And so we need someone else then to do the outreach. One of the outreaches, in fact, we need someone to coordinate that, but I think that we could go continue with places like Reddit and just go in and have 4 or 5 or 6 of us. One of them writes a post, and then the other guys jump in and answer that post and continue the thread. So that because talking about visiting temples and things like that is almost alien to the Western mind state. So these are the kind of projects that we could get going. Most of them are outreach. We would use emails and that kind of thing. So these are the kind of projects that we would have under the umbrella of the structure of the 501(c) and the roles. So I think that our thoughts are just fitting in exactly perfectly here.
Dhammarato, I have a clarifying question about the quasi-established teachers versus the wannabe teachers. So would a quasi-established teacher be someone like who's gone through like one of Jack Cornfield's programs or something? Like what's the difference between the two?
Yes, exactly. Precisely. You're reading my mind, in fact. There are a number of them. In fact, we have Catman, did a scrape and went out and found, so we've got like 100 or more of Jack Kornfield's graduates. We've got a number of St. John Young's graduates. Where are those guys? What are they doing? Did they just get a piece of paper and put it on the wall as a trophy for having spent $7,000? Or are they out actively doing something? If they're out actively doing something, then what model are they using? Probably the model of their teacher, which means getting some money out of it. Everybody, in fact, this is something that I've heard about Reddit, and everybody there on Reddit says, well, you've got to eat. And the answer to that is go eat, and when you're full and happy, then come teach. But you don't say, I want to teach, therefore I want to eat, and let's go make some money and do them both at the same time. That's not how we do it. We go get eaten first. Oh, excuse me. We go and eat first. And after we're full, then we can teach the Dhamma. So this is the kind of way that we're looking at it, is that this is something that's very unique and interesting. And that is that after a monk has ordained and has become established in the Sangha, there is no more worries about the future meals. And yet everybody who's got a job, you still worry about where the next meal is going to come from. In the sense that you could lose your job and then all hell breaks loose, right? Or you could lose a girlfriend and all hell breaks loose. But if you're in the Sangha itself will protect you unless you're a really bad actor. This is, by the way, a conversation I'm going to be having with Steve James in the future about that issue, about really, really bad actors. Because when I was talking about how the watch or how the monks protect each other to give them safety, Steve brings up the issue of, well, what about Catholic priests molesting the boys? The answer to that is that the priests are not molesting other priests. They're molesting the community. And the community knows about this. If it's now an issue of the community, the monks or the priests don't have any say-so anymore. That if the cops come for a man who is dressed as a monk in the temple to take him to jail, no one's going to have anything to say about that. That's between him and the cops. So coming back to the point that if the monk is well behaved, his future is set. And so he can continue then to focus on just the Dhamma, because he doesn't have to worry about where his next meal is coming from. He may not like the next meal, but he knows he's going to have one. Okay,
is there going to be any plans?
Go ahead.
Yeah, is there going to be any plans? I know you're talking about having people go to Asian Watts and move from there, but is there going to be a plan to move this model to the West so we can actually have a Western Watt and Western Sangha, where it's not?
That's Chris, I'm so surprised at you of not knowing this, because I've said it so many times, and that is that basically it starts with a conversation that I had with Achan Reek at Wat Atamayattarama in Seattle, Washington, and that he said that now there are more than 200 Thai Watts in the United States. Now I already know that that's unbelievably high, because the Thai is not the prominent Asian culture in the United States. The Vietnamese, and followed by Cambodia and Laos, with Thai being number 4. So if they have had double the number of Watts in the past 15 years, and maybe the other Asian communities have also, which would indicate now there's probably more than 500 Watts spread all over the United States and Asia, and Europe. And so it's not that we have to establish a nationwide in the West. They're already established. They're already there.
Well,
we have
I
hundreds.
understand. Yeah, no, I understand there's Asian Watts in the West. I'm saying, is there a plan to have Western Watts in the West? So, Americans starting Watts.
Okay, the answer to that would be Ajahn Chah's community already has dozens of Western style watts going. There's 4 or 5 of them in England. There's Abayagiri, and there's another one in Massachusetts. So there's 2 in the United States. There are Australia has several. So the watts themselves are already available. What we need is to get our folks to start visiting these watts, and they can visit those watts, but there's only a few of them. We're talking about under 20 as opposed to 500 that are available that people, I mean, they're under the radar. An example of that is I know a big Laotian Wat in Atlanta. It's not the only Laotian Wat. I know 4 or 5, but this is the really big one. And they have a website in the Lao language. In the Lao language. I mean, you have probably known about Thai, but Lao is even a different language than Thai. And even the Thai people don't understand the Lao. That's the funny part, is the Lao always understand the Thai, but the Thai never understand the Lao. It's almost like the blacks understand white language in the U.S., but the whites don't understand what the blacks are talking about. And so that's the example of what the problem is it's a problem of communication. And that's what our organization is going to be mostly concerned with, is communications. To get people into the watch, to get them to locate where these watch are, to find one that's local. And here's a typical example. If somebody comes on and says, well, I live in Podunk. What do I do? And so one of us will get on the internet with him and look around the area, find out what's there, find out what we have in our own stuff, maybe even call a monk or 2 in the U.S. to say, hey, do you know of any Watts or anyone who is already in Podunk? And so we can network that way and get these people into a Watt that nobody else even in that town will know about. But a Buddhist monk or an abbot that's in a different Watt, that's close by, he will know about this small Watt that the Westerners don't know about because it's all in an Asian language. Okay, so this is basically, it's a communications thing that I'm looking for. Let's get a wide number of Western people to start thinking about Buddhism, not from a book, not from Reddit, not from online, but to get them actively to go meet people who really know what the Dhamma is all about.
Hey, Dhammarato, I actually had a question for you about that. So yesterday, me, Parker, and Chris, we were like talking about the mission statement, and we were trying to make the mission statement a little bit more precise to what we're actually trying to do. And we all talked about exactly what you're saying. Like the whole point is to get people in the Watts and like really experience Sangha. But I guess like I wonder if it would be helpful if you could help kind of maybe go into detail a little bit more about like why it's important to get people in the Watts, like why you can only experience that Sangha really by experiencing the Watts. And we were having trouble like verbalizing that ourselves, but I'm wondering if you could help us kind of flesh that out and think through that a little bit more.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we can say is that I have a number of people who come on and talk about the fact that Dhamma is going to be hard for me because in Podunk here, nobody knows anything about Buddhism. There are no friends available. And this is part of the reason why we started all of this Skype stuff. And I think that every one of you would admit that you've gotten great benefit out of meeting each other. But if you only had a communication with me, then your understanding of it would be different. But now you're beginning to get a network going. But in fact, secretly, on the side, I'll say that one of the reasons why I want to start this organization is not for the benefit of the people that we're going to outreach to. It's for the benefit of the guys who were building the organization, because in the process of them building the organization, they'll be building friendships. That I'm looking for Sangha right here in this organization, to get you guys together, to get you guys to know each other, to get you guys to be able to feel confident with each other. That we would invite any one of us would invite any one of us to come stay at our house if you needed to. If you need a place to hang out, this is, I've got a porch here, come stay with me. Unfortunately, that's going to be a whole bunch of hoops to jump through because of just, the logistics of location. But friendship is all what this is about. This is one thing that has been drilled into me from the monks at every wat that I've been to, that the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha is a triple gem, and they work together. That we can't just have Dhamma books in the West and expect any real Buddhism to be there. That we've got to have the Sangha. And so this is what I'm trying to promote.
And so, let's just to play the devil's advocate. Let's say you had somebody, and this is not what I think, but let's say someone were to come in and say, "Well, why do you need to go in the Watts? I already have my Sangha. I go on to the Friday night calls with Dhammarato. I'm on Reddit. I'm on the stream entry Reddit, and that's all I need, right? Isn't that good enough? Why do I have to go to the Watts?"
Then we congratulate them because they have enough and they are satisfied. Maybe they're satisfied enough that they would be able to give guidance to someone who says, well, I don't have any friends and I don't have any communications and I don't know what to do. And the answer to that would be, instead of inviting the Reddit people to come join my little organization, would be to promote, go to your local Wat and find out some people that you can get really close to, that you can meet. Okay. So basically what this is it's another way of saying that this is a diversionary tactic on my part, so that I don't have to be the center of attention. I don't want to be the center of attention. I want you guys to build an organization so that the organization itself is the center of attention, not any individual person. This is again Sangha. It's not one dude. This is very typical at Wat Suan Mo, that even though everybody is around Bhikkhu Buddhadasa kind of as the center post, or now with him gone, Achan Po is the center hub, except that he does very little, because all of the monks around him are already friends with one another. That this is one of the things that's missing completely in the Goenka system, that Goenka didn't set up a group of lieutenants that were promoted to colonel and then to general. All he has is plebes. That's why they have to keep doing it on video, is because no one has taken on the responsibility of, I can help teach too. I can help share the Dhamma also. I can make friends by helping people understand the Dhamma. That in fact is the best benefit that I've gotten out of all of this time that I put in the past 6 and 7 years here, is I've got a huge number of friends. And I consider each one of you a good friend of mine. Thank you all for joining and being a friend of mine. And I hope that this organization will help you also have a large number of friends, Dhamma friends you can trust. And in the process, we can spread that to the general community, because otherwise Western Buddhism is going to become just another ordinary religion. And the real teaching of the Buddha is going to get lost in the religion of money, the religion of power, the religion of politics, and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's basically what we're looking at here. And I really appreciate all of you for coming in and participating with this. I think that we can do it. I don't think that this is an undoable thing.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think just the challenge is learning how to coordinate these people all across the world where we're all not in the same room together. We're not all sharing the same context. And so I think that's the thing we've been kind of like the growing pains of learning to handle that. And I think we're well on our way, and huge shout out to Parker, especially putting like a ton of work into this and making this, the point we're at now is largely to him. So yeah, thank you, Parker.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. I'm glad to help, and I really appreciate Tyler as well with the governance meeting. He's been doing a lot of research just in his own time for it, and was able to bring all that research to the table here, and already with the proposal process set up, and that would be another few weeks or month at least of us figuring out. And if we had never figured it out as an organization, some sort of structure, there's the potential that everything just gets clogged up in communication. So yeah, if anyone has anything else to say, you can go ahead and say it. I'll give one more reminder to for those interested in joining the board of directors to look over, and if you're interested, fill out that submission form. And then from there,
I need to see that because I've got some people that I want to send that to. That's actually something that we can go right into from here, since we all are kind of on the same page about the point about roles and then projects. I think that we've gotten that pretty well straightened out. So what I was hoping that we could get finalized today is the full go-ahead. Let's do the 501(c)(3). We've got it. We know what we're going to do. Let's do it. Now, we've already got the financing through Matt, but if he doesn't do it, I will. So the financing for the 501(c), we don't have to worry about. All we need to do is, I guess, the paperwork, and we've already gotten, from what I understand from Parker, we've already gotten someone on the website who has expertise in doing 501(c)(3), and they're going to be able to do it for a small fee of $100 or so. So we have a state fee, the federal fee, and this fee, and I think that we're kind of ready to go. The questions that I've heard is that we need addresses for the people who are going to be on the board. Then we've got the issue of how much money, and the answer to that is let's start small with unfunded volunteers. Is there anything else that we need to straighten out about any of the features of the 501(c) so that we can give it a go now?
The one last thing will be the board, and that'll be with the people submitting this form. Once we have that group of people, and that group of people puts in their addresses and everything, and we'll probably have some sort of meeting once the form has been passed around and filled out. Another meeting with everyone discussing it, and since there's no formal leader or anything, that will sort of decide together, this is someone who's willing to be on the board, oh, I'm someone who's willing to be on the board, and such. And so once that's together, those people will be written down with their names and addresses on the form that we have. But everything else is pretty much going. Yes, we have the form. We know the money that it takes. Matt has volunteered the money, and we know the process. We're familiar with the process of what steps will be taken with the 501(c)(3) once we have the list of people.
Okay. Well, we do have a list of people. I think that we'd had as many as 11. Now all we need is addresses, right?
Well, we need a commitment from them to like the actual board members. I mean, I know everyone said, yeah, we want to be on the board, but we need to make sure that, we can have a bigger board, but the 4 or 5 people that are going to be a voting member on that board, we have to make sure they're going to do the role that we need them to do, and they're good with that, and they know what's involved, because otherwise it's just a name on a piece of paper. So if they know they got to do 4 or 5 hours a month of accounting, and they're willing to commit to that 4 or 5 months of 5 hours a month of accounting, and meet up once a month with the board and do a report, and they're good with that, then okay, we're good. But just
Okay.
having the name of people that are like, hey, we want to be on the board, that's not gonna be enough. So
I got it. Okay. Um, Joe, would you be on the board? I mean, here you are on the call, so you already care, and I've seen you write a whole bunch of stuff. Would you be willing to be on this? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I have
now
enough
we've
free.
got
Yeah, I have
four.
enough free time. Yeah, I have enough
Well-
free time that I can do that.
Wait, so Dhammarato, do you want to clarify something? Is that we're targeting, and so yeah, anybody can apply to be on the board. We're targeting 4 to 6 people. So we're still gonna like, hopefully we might only have 6 people that apply, and that'd make it easy. If more people than applied, we wouldn't put everyone's name on it. We're targeting a smaller board.
Okay. Well, here's the smaller board right here. We've got 6.
Yeah,
And that's why I'm starting around the on my thing. We've got Tyler and Parker and Chris already on. We now added Joe. That's 4.
Yeah.
Robert,
So the
we've got
only
2
thing-
Roberts here.
The only thing with me is my address is in France, and like I'm in the process of like giving up my American citizenship, so I don't know how that like affects anything.
So
at
let's-
all,
I don't
but-
think that has a clue. I mean,
Okay.
anything
Worry about
involved. An address is an address.
So
Okay.
let's not worry about the specifics here. Like I think the idea is that everyone can fill out this form, and at Dhammarato, I think what I'm gathering your concern is like this is dragged on for a long time. Like let's just do the thing.
Let's do it.
And so I share your urgency. I think Parker and Chris, we all do as well. And so I think maybe let's just make a commitment that let's just say like a week or 2 weeks from now, let's just choose a date that we're gonna have the board chosen, right? Or we're gonna have a meeting to like fully finalize the board. How about that?
All right.
After
okay.
this, I'll send another meeting invite or schedule invite for a little bit from now, 2 weeks.
Sound
Right.
Yeah.
Robert, what you have?
Oh, I thought he was about to say all in favor of, so I just started raising my hand, but he said something completely
Oh.
different. So, yeah. I thought we were
Okay.
doing a little vote.
Well, let me grill, now that you've done that, let me grill you like I just grilled Joe. Would you be willing to be on this board?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't mind emailing teachers either.
Okay, excellent. So now we've got 5. Robert Cohen. You're also an old hand here. He left. He raised his hand and took a hike.
So just one thing I want to clarify, like there's boards and then there's the member. The board is just purely about governance, but it does not to say like there are going to be members too who are contributing way more than anybody on the board too, right? So like there's multiple ways you can contribute, and board we're not, and obviously I think we're all like we all have something very valuable to offer, and we should all like apply if this is something you want to do. But like there's different ways to contribute, and boards are very specific, and there's also members, and that's also something really wonderful and that could add a ton of value and a ton of work too. So however way you want to contribute is totally fine, but if you want to put in a ton of work, that doesn't need to be through a board. That can be through a role.
Yep, to emphasize that the board role is merely people who have the time to meet a little while and are willing to do the communication in favor of a certain mission of whatever the mission is decided, spreading Sangha, or that's the vague idea. That this is just a specific role. It's not some power structure of any kind. It's people who have a little extra time and are wanting to do the organization and communication for the group. And there will be other people who receive that communication and from those instructions follow through on the instructions. So this is just since communication needs to be the first step in getting things going, so the roles can be communicated. That's why it's the priority.
Okay. Back to what I was on about, I think that we've got a quorum here. We've got enough right now to say this is our board. Or we can add a few more later.
So I think we could, but the board is a really critical role. Like it is like really important for getting the ball rolling. And I think we want to like, there are many people who said they want to be on the board. And we know that we have like at least 11 people who said they want to be on the board. And we know that we can't have them all on the board because we know that based on like our experience on passports, case studies, that's like way too big for where we are right now.
Okay. So
we
all
know
right, Tyler. So then, what's our next step? Where do we go from here? Now that we've already got 5 people on the board.
So I'll set up a
volunteers.
message, Dhammarato, and with with this video, I'll upload the video to YouTube, so that people will be able to watch through this video. There'll be a little message. This is the proposal, and then there'll be a link for a submission where there's a couple of questions to fill out. And so if you have anyone in mind who is interested on the board, you'll send that out to them, and I'll put that in the chat here as well.
Well, we've already got, what, 11 or 12 names of people, and so we can begin with that. I don't even know. I think there's quite a lot of overlap between what we have right here and the people who were already listed for the board. So
yes, that's right. And so the next step now is to take that 11 people, and now we need to filter down to people like who actually wants to contribute to this, because the board is a serious role, and the name of a board member should have a lot of meaning of like what they're going to be doing. And so basically we just have to whittle that 11 down to the 4 to 6, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll. And but we share your sense of urgency that like this needs to be done soon. It's very long overdue. And so like don't worry, we're gonna get this done very soon. We'll spin up the 501c3. It's gonna be made very soon.
I've been holding my breath. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate what you've been doing. And so it looks like that we've got a plan of waiting just a little bit to get the board formalized, and I'll let you guys take care of how you want to do that. But I really do appreciate all the help and work that you've put in so far. And I'm hoping that I would like to advertise it a little bit differently than you're seeing, that each board member has a whole lot of work to do. And I would hope that we would have a board so that people don't have so much work to do. But I can also see in some cases that the larger the board, the more work there is to do. And so keeping the board kind of small might be a better thing to do. But I think that
at first, with any startup, it'll be a lot of people doing a little bit of work just because all the communication stuff. But it's like Tyler said, once things get up and rolling, ideally the board position is less work, and people who fill roles will be doing most of the work. That it's more maintenance, where the parents have to do a lot of work with getting the baby off the table. Once the baby starts to walk, there's less work from the parents.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's not that it's necessarily a lot of work. It's just a certain type of work, and we want to make sure that the people who are doing that job are very suited to that like type of work. And so that's all it is. It's not necessarily that's going to be a huge job. Cool, y'all.
Great. Well, I think we covered all we wanted to cover, and check out the forum that'll be associated with this video. I'll post the link in chat, and we'll meet in a couple weeks.
Yes, one thing I would say to post this video immediately. Don't put it in the queue.
Okay. Yes, we'll do.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Parker. Thanks, Tyler.
Guys,
good seeing you, Robert.
This has been great. Thank you.
Ciao, everybody.
Thank you all for coming. This was good.
Okay, bye-bye.